So, good evening, everyone. I'm the swirling dot on the screen right now for those who are asking where this voice is coming from because my webcam's decided not to work tonight. Anyway, this is Throwing with Logic, 1st of March 2014, roughly 7 o'clock here in the UK and 2 p.m. Eastern Time in the States. Just the usual announcements. If you do want to call in, because calling in, you'll jump the queue for the questions. We do give callers priority. Add the Skype contact, Throwing with Logic. Send us a PM, quick yes to the question, and we'll add you in due course to the conversation. And also by calling in, remember this show is recorded for later uploading, so no funny stuff with the DMCAs and that later. And the show recording, as you can see with our funky new watermark in the corner, we are public domain, so feel free to mirror the show, and we have been seeing lots of people mirroring the show, so please do that. And just link back to us as a courtesy. And don't know, is there any announcements? Yes, quickly with Living Waters, I'm still trying to get a hold of legal advice, and they either seem to be wanting a ridiculous fee up front, or they want me to point out all the parts in a 2-hour video where the alleged copyright infringement is, and I don't have the time. So, you can contact me if you know where I can get some cheap legal advice on this issue. I really need it, and I don't think there's any other announcements after that. So, very quickly, a reduced panel tonight, and as always, welcoming back Marty. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
And Sheila, welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, one final announcement. As you know, we cancelled last week with Dale McGowan, and we have gotten back for the 5th of April. We rescheduled that because I know there was a lot of interest in that show, and so I'll just hand over. You can introduce and get fired in with the questions as usual. Oops, I don't know what that was, but carry on, please.
Okay, our guest this week is Bridgett Crutchfield, who is the founder of, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the founder of the Non-Believers of Michigan, is that correct?
Minority Atheists of Michigan.
Thank you.
And the president of Black Non-Believers of Detroit.
Fantastic. I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it. Would you give us a little bit of backstory about yourself, how you went from being a believer to trying to help other people come out?
I was raised a Jehovah's Witness in California, Los Angeles, California. And quickly I became angry once I became a teenager. There was so much that we couldn't do, and I just couldn't understand why couldn't we have interactions with our classmates outside of class? Why couldn't we go to their house? We weren't supposed to be on football team, cheerleading. So quickly I knew that I would not be a lifelong Jehovah's Witness. But even with all that, I ended up being baptized as a Jehovah's Witness at the age of 17. And at 18, I walked away. I just could not see myself participating in such an oppressive religion. So I went through this spiritual phase and studied Buddhism and Nation of Islam, and subsequently I became a Pentecostal Christian in my 30s. And I was very happy being a Christian because it was such a difference between the quiet atmosphere of the Jehovah's Witness to this lively people running around the church in a Pentecostal church. And I became part of leadership because I wanted to help people. And subsequently, I became frustrated because I noticed that people were becoming hurt in the church more than being helped. And I remember asking the woman that ministered to me, what do you do? Because she always referenced church as a hospital. And I said, well, what do you do when people go to the hospital and they're sicker when they leave than upon entering? And she said, you put it in God's hands. And I wasn't satisfied with that answer. So I ended up leaving church altogether, but I was still a Christian and maintained that I was going to have a relationship with God, studied the Bible to the best of my ability. But what I was reading was just horrifying. You know, I would read Proverbs and Psalms, the feel-good scriptures. But when I set out in Genesis there were just so many questions of, that atheists have about light. God created light and the sun, and it's just like, wait a minute. So if you created light, what preceded? It was just so many discrepancies. Like when I got to Exodus and read the stories about Pharaoh, God having to harden Pharaoh's heart, and I'm like, well, if you had to harden his heart, then logically that leads me to believe that his heart was soft and was probably going to free the Hebrews. So there were just so many questions. And when I would ask the woman who led me to Christ, she always would say, God's way is not our way. And I just became increasingly frustrated. And I couldn't do it anymore. I could not defend a God that was okay with being a mercenary. Because that's what I was discovering. God was nothing short of a mercenary. And looking at the news and the current events, I said, there cannot be a God. There cannot be a God. And that led me to my path of atheism.
Right. Okay. So once you kind of cast off the whole religion part of your life, what was your next step? How did you get involved in, being active in the community, I suppose?
I think many atheists who become active don't set out wanting to be active. You just want to learn. And so I ended up attending a meetup, and I noticed that there weren't too many people that looked like me, not only Black, but there weren't many women. And so I asked the organizer, about the disparity. I questioned her, and she put the ball in my court, and she asked me, what was I going to do about it? And I just looked at her like, what the hell do you mean? What am I going to do? This is something you should fix. I didn't verbalize that, but that's how I looked at her. This is something you should do. And she told me she's done all she can. So if I see an issue, I need to do something about it. And then that's when I created Minority Atheists of Michigan. I was mad at her for challenging me. I was very upset because I'm like, lady, I'm just here to learn. But she was right. She was right. So,
how has it been received, especially within the Black community? Do you get a lot of opposition? Do you find that you get more opposition within the Black community than you do being accepted in the atheist community as a whole?
I didn't. What's funny is Minority Atheists of Michigan is predominantly white.
Really?
When I tell people that, they're like, what? Yeah, it's predominantly white. So no, I haven't had too much opposition from that group. But the opposition came when I created the affiliate for Black non-believers. And I think what's sad is in our community, as soon as you see the word Black, as soon as you see Middle Eastern, African, Asian, the races in the secular community come out in droves. Right. None of these people, even with this promo, I was reading the comments, and I'm just like, wow, that escalated quickly, didn't take long. But these people who go, why do you have to have the name Black? None of these people have attended one minority meetup. We do not believe in excluding anyone. This is open to everybody. And that's because there are some people who have never had contact with Black people, who never had contact with Asians. So I just think it's so sad that as atheists, we always require evidence and proof of believers, but atheists don't require evidence and proof for racism. They're just straight out racist against something they have no knowledge of. And the bigotry is the racists, the bigots is very frustrating. But even with that, we still move on.
Right.
And if there was a white atheist club, there will be called white supremacists. See, like the comment in the chat group. This is it's so remedial, and it's so rudimentary, and it's so junior high. These kind of comments like that, it was sad at first, but now we laugh at them because these are the exact type of people who make assumptions, don't ask us any questions, don't try to research, don't attend our meetups, but are so quick to jump out the gate being an asshole. And it's despicable. It's deplorable.
Right.
On that subject, could I just, I think we all here know the answer to it, but just for the sake of clarity, why is it a good idea to have a Black atheists group?
It's good not to just have Black groups, but it's also good to have any group that is not going to be acknowledged in the bigger realm, in a bigger form. We call ourselves Black because this helps people who are in the closet and questioning identify us. This helped the Asians, the secular Asian group, help their community to identify themselves. Same with David Tamayo and the Hispanic humanists. That it's all about identifying. It's not to exclude and it's not to separate. We are in an addition to the community, not instead of. And I think people just refuse to accept that.
Yeah, the answer that I was that I gave to someone who asked this question in a comment section was that it has to do with culture. That and what I was thinking, I don't know if you
Elaborate.
agree or disagree, but it basically. Being Black means that you are, and I really hope I can avoid using offensive terminology here, but
please don't.
You're sort of wearing the colors of a subculture, whether you want to or not. It's kind of like a Christian can wear a crucifix around his neck and show that he's a Christian. He belongs to that culture, but that's a choice he makes. When you're Black in a predominantly white society, you belong to a Black subculture, for lack of a better word, at least in the minds of many people.
Right.
And that's not a choice because you can't just choose a different skin color. So
Correct.
People have ideas about what applies to someone who shows off this quote unquote symbol of, dark skin. And people have this idea like, okay, for one, they're supposed to be evangelist Christians. But white people don't have that same label. You don't see a white person, okay, you're a Christian.
Right.
So I guess that makes it, I guess if you're a Black atheist, you're sort of outside the club, as it were. You don't fit in the minds of your own people or other people. You're just, it's just wrong in the minds of so many, if you understand what I mean.
Oh, well, I understand exactly what you mean. I've been called the bride of Satan, a tool of Satan. I'm working in the devil's workshop. I was challenged in my family. People stopped talking to me once I started attending church and affiliating with religion. And if you listen to any minority who's also atheist, there was always going to be an underlying theme, a common underlying theme. Religion is tied to not only you, it's tied to, you represent your parents, you represent your culture, everything that from when you meet someone that looks like you, pretty soon the question is going to be, what church do you go to? Because you're also judged on who your pastor is, the type of car that you drive, which determines how prosperous your pastor is. So these are things that you will hear a Hispanic person say, an Asian person say. We represent everyone, not just ourselves. And so we've been challenged by white people who say, well, we endure issues too. I'm not discounting that, and we're not discounting that. I think that the difference is that you weren't forced into religion. You weren't forced with being killed. You weren't forced with being separated from your family for the rest of your life if you don't accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Right. And then turn around to have your ancestors oppress you with the same religion that they were oppressed by. Yeah. So there is a difference.
That's interesting. It brings me to another point that I don't think necessarily even a lot of Black people understand, is that religion was kind of forced on you as yet, just another way to control Blacks during the slave era. Can you kind of go into that a little bit more?
Well, I can only assume because I wasn't there.
Right.
But it was, there were many slaves who were, it was indoctrinated, but many slaves couldn't read. They couldn't read the Bible and then get to have the ability to apply critical thinking skills. So of course there were only select scriptures in the Bible that were used. And surely the scriptures that justify slavery, our people were beat over the head with those scriptures, which I think is, they didn't have that knowledge. My ancestors didn't have that knowledge, but we have that knowledge now. And I remember a white atheist. I wasn't even studying or researching. Being an atheist wasn't even on my mind. But this white guy asked me, I don't understand how you, as a Black woman, could be a Christian. And I said, why? And he said, because of slavery. The Bible does not say it's not okay to be a slave. The Bible condones slavery. I never, ever gave it a thought until he said that. And I turned around with my tail between my legs, and I was so embarrassed because someone white had to point that out to me. Number two, he was right.
Right.
He was right. How can you be a Christian and Black when the Bible surely in black and white authorizes slavery? And I just tucked that under my cloak of denial. But once years later, when I began my path on atheism, his words just came rushing back, and I sent him an email and thanked him for his candor, because he was correct. And I repeat those words to people that I come in contact. How can you justify being a Christian?
How is that received within, at least within the Black community? What's your reaction when you talk to other, to Black believers? With denial, just like I was in denial. We don't, when I was at church, God, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, but I was at church and my former pastor, I'm trying not to get upset, but he quoted the New Testament scriptures, slave, obey your masters, blah, blah, blah. But he flipped those scriptures to say that the masters was your boss, your supervisor, the person in authority on your job, and the slaves were the employees. Now, as someone who has had in my lineage slaves, I took offense to that, as I think anyone would, because my people and the people of other Black people today didn't have a choice. They could not leave the plantation. They could not leave the field. I have a choice. I can quit AT&T right now and say, fuck it, I'm done. My people couldn't, they didn't have that choice. So to hear a Black pastor distort and intentionally misconstrue those scriptures, it was horrifying. And it was also insulting. I was so insulted. And I just looked at him like, are you fucking kidding me? And I just drove home in silence, because this is what is common. We put shit in a box and wrap it up in pretty wrapping paper and a beautiful bow and present it to others, but it's still shit, right? No matter how it's packaged. It's very
this is
upsetting.
Something that comes up a lot when you talk to apologists. They will always try to say things like, well, slavery in the Bible, they were talking about indentured servitude. They were talking about, yeah. Well, look, a slave can't quit his job. That's the point. Right. He is property. That's why it's wrong. I don't care if you treat your slaves well. The fact that he can't leave, that's the problem.
Right. Well, I think you I think you have to make your answers pretty so that you don't lose money in the collection box.
Right.
So that you can still maintain your position as pastor, priest, bishop. You can't be honest because people, for the most part in the church, can't readily accept honesty. They're not ready to accept honesty. It would undo the very foundation that has been established. You can't tell them the truth. They're not ready. So when I come across atheists who attempt to shove non-belief down believers' throats, see, that didn't work for me. That made me dig my heels in even more so. I believe in educating what atheism is and what it isn't, but you can't be as fanatical as the very believers that we talk about, because you're going to have the same result.
Absolutely true. Absolutely.
You can't do it. Yeah.
Okay, Sheila.
We've got a question here from the chat room. What's Bria's opinion on the social justice trend in some of the atheist groups?
Well, there's a couple of trends, so can we be specific?
That's as specific as it is, I guess. Pick one and run with it, I suppose.
Yeah. I think the notion of social justice, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think that we should get out there and fight disparity and fight discrimination. I think the tactics and the methods of some should be rethought. The methods need to, go back to the drawing board, but I'm all for social justice. I just don't think you have to verbally destroy people or troll those who disagree in order to prove a point. I don't think that method is effective. By all means, speak out and blog about it. But I don't think bullying, I think bullying is ineffective.
Well, and if you have to trash another group just to make your message heard, I think it's going to get lost and people are going to turn away anyway.
Well, it is going to get lost, and it has gotten lost. And then that goes back to, the tactics. And once you start reading the first sentence, and you can easily identify, oh, I see where this shit going, and I just X out and just move on. I just don't think that trashing, to gain help and to gain allies, you don't trash the very audience that you want help from.
Right.
Okay, Sheila, there's some pre-prepared questions that Jay sent us a few hours ago. So I don't know if you can... I think read through them first, because her English isn't so good. So.
Yeah,
I tried reading them, and frankly, I'm not sure I understand them.
I'm going to start with the second one.
Right.
Excuse me, because that one, I got a little more clarity on that one. We are trying as human rights activists to put high pressure on Uganda to respect gay rights, but nothing's been working, unfortunately. So as a human rights activist myself, I worry about the gay rights that are almost absent in Africa. Do you think that there is a way to make gay rights in Africa real?
While I am sorry about the plight of those in Africa. I think before we decide to cross the waters, I think we need to fix the human rights issues in America. I think that question should be applied to America. I live in Michigan, and I'm looking at the states around me that have now made legally getting married to your same-sex partner is okay. I'm in Michigan, and the Michigan Constitution says marriage is between a man and a woman. So so that question, I think we need to take care of home before we need to go and fight for Africa. I am very sorry about being sentenced to death because of who you love and who you're attracted to. I think it's appalling. But that indoctrination came from missionaries who brought the word of God, and I put that in air quotes, who brought the word of God and has successfully, maybe too successfully, indoctrinated those scriptures into the people of Africa, and who are truly taking the scriptures literally, not as an allegory, not as a parable. They have truly gone and dropped the hammer like the Old Testament God has. So let's take care of the people in America, in the United States, who can't get benefits because their relationship has been branded as null and valid. We have long-term same-sex couples who, if one is dying if they're on their deathbed, the partner can't come and say goodbye because they're not acknowledged. There are Catholic Church who will not allow you to sit in there and say goodbye to your partner. That's disgusting. We have hate crimes that you have to jump hurdles just to make sure it's indeed a hate crime. So the same issues that's going on in there, maybe it's not as extensive and not as blatant, but we have some serious issues as far as the gay rights in America also.
Right. Well, and, this is somewhat of an international show where we have fans all over the place. Our panel is from all over. And I believe, if I know who this person is that sent the question is, I believe that she's from one of the countries where oppression is really high.
Yeah.
What country?
We can't say.
She doesn't want that.
Okay.
She's kind of in trouble.
She has everything that you hear that's bad about religion in some of the poorer countries. She has personally experienced, and I mean everything.
I can't imagine.
So I think this is why
she's so brave.
She is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hats off. I am. I was speaking to someone who is from the Middle East. So, even with all the bad that we experience in America, we are still spoiled. When I listen, it's kind of hard to identify myself as an activist when there are truly people whose lives are on the line as soon as they hit the internet, and they have to think twice about what they upload. They have to think twice about what they put on Facebook. They have to think twice about their actions before they even walk out the door. So, I'm an activist, but I pale in comparison to the female that has experienced the untold types of persecution. I haven't had, my persecution is verbal, or emails, or inbox, but how, I don't know if I could withstand with my life being threatened. I don't know. So am I an activist? I'm an activist in that I speak out and say this shit is wrong. How much of an activist would I be if a law was submitted and authorized for me to lose my life? I might think twice. I don't know. So hats off to all of our international brethren who truly made the decision to put their life on the line. That's an activist.
Right.
That's an activist.
Right. I grew up, in a secular household. I never had to deal with indoctrination on any side. My family was all accepting, no matter, when I came out with my sexuality, and with the, being, growing up atheist, I left it from, so I really don't have a whole lot, to compare myself to when it comes to everybody else growing up, especially in this community, because there are so many who were, indoctrinated and oppressed and have had to go through so many often violent upbringings, especially within their community. So, it's always amazing to me to get to talk to people like Jay, like, what she's had to go through. And even when I did the protest, the online protest, I got to talk to all sorts of people who went through just crazy stuff. And so I try and do this as much as possible so that I can help, tell their stories for them when they can't necessarily have an audience or put themselves out there. So,
it's one thing to read it online or on a news site, but when you know someone directly, whether it's Facebook or you've had interaction, who who is living the very life that you've read about. And it, I feel powerless. I try to do as many petitions as I can. I try to retweet. I try to share, but I try to donate as much as I can when I can, but I still feel so powerless. I can't, because you want to protect them. You want, like, they are literally in the fight for their lives. Today, our lives is not on the line, but I don't know if that'll change. But I just feel so powerless that I can't be of more assistance to truly hell of an activists such as those we're discussing.
Right.
I have a question there. It's kind of well known, like the LGBT community, they get a lot of support, like just from atheists in general. But what's it like for a black LGBT as well? Is it quite tough? Is it, just in general for them?
No, I'm black and I'm lesbian, and I know several black and LGBT. That's not an issue, because there are so many atheists, period, who's part of the community. Yeah. So that's something that we share. But it's the difference in skin color. And let me also say, the support is growing for minority atheists in general. I attended the American conference, the American Atheist Conference in Austin, and I was able to see David Tamayo with a table set up. He was tabling. He gave a presentation. I was able to attend this conference and not be able to count how many black people attended, which is something when you're a grain of black pepper in a sea of salt. Yeah, you kind of stick out like you're obvious. But it was such we had such an emotional time, because we were really excited that we were not able to keep count of how many minorities were in attendance. And I'm even more excited because that's going to increase in Salt Lake City. And so I don't want people to think that black. Unless you're a minority, you will never be able to understand what the difference is. Never. But how about, instead of making assumptions, how about asking genuine questions in order to learn, and not to be a troll and not to be an asshole? Because what is the benefit? Is there a prize for being an asshole? What do you get out of that besides making yourself something? To me, I like I tell people, these are trolls who are inconsequential in their real life and choose this path in order to be bigger than life online, and they are fed by attention. I'm not giving you that, so how about asking questions and researching the way we demand believers? What's wrong with that?
Nothing. I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. There's another question. Do you ever get, the black atheist groups, do you ever get that accusation, you're trying to be white? Is that, because I have seen that in some forums, like in the Black Atheist Reddit, and that does seem to come. Have you ever had to deal with that accusation yourself?
I've dealt with that accusation outside of the groups. Okay. Not from within. And I would never go to Reddit. Reddit is so racist and so unkind and so vulgar. I made 2 visits, and that was enough for me. And I just learned quickly that just because we're atheists, there is indoctrination. I don't know if it's from religion or just from it's being nurtured, that bigotry is alive and well in the atheist community, in the secular community. But on the same note, I would also like to say that the support that minority atheists are receiving is phenomenal. We are getting great support from the major organizations. So I don't want to sit here and lament about the bigots. Why? there's a void in their life that I'm not going to attempt to fulfill, and that's not my burden. So I'd rather shed light on American Atheists and Center for Inquiry, Secular Women, so these are we have such a resounding amount of support that I just don't want to focus on these naysayers with no lives. That's just not my job.
Okay, Sheila, I'll let you come in there.
Okay, another question from Jay. She said, you said in one of your Google Hangouts that you should do what you are doing as an active atheist because you want to put more options out there for your grandchildren. The options that you couldn't give to your children. And she says, I love that because I'm doing what I am doing as human rights activist because I want a better future for my children and for other children around the world. Do you think what you and Jay and people like us are doing, do you think we're dreamers or what?
No.
Do you think, okay.
You know what? You just mentioned my grandbabies and woo. I'm a sucker. When I came out, it was 20 years ago. It was absolutely horrific. It was horrific. But 20 years later, I can say I'm gay and people's like, yeah, so what? Like, have a seat. So I am so hopeful about the same with my grandchildren. And I can't believe she brought that up. And thank you for watching that hangout. See, the difference was I indoctrinated my children. I didn't know I had a choice, so I couldn't teach my kids that they had a choice. So now it is my job, it is my duty to have my children convey to their children that they have a choice. I'm not a dreamer, not in this instance. I believe that there is going to come a time, maybe 20 years from now, I'll be damn near 70, that this community will be less volatile for minority atheists. That is my hope. I really hope, and I really hope at least one of my grandchildren will step up and join the fight with me. That would be awesome.
Are your children still, sorry to interrupt, are your kids still Christian?
My daughter, she still identifies, but my son does not. He is a non-believer. He told me, and that happened without any shoving it down his throat. I didn't force it on him. He came to his own conclusion. So I'm very proud of that.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. So
all right, let's see.
That brought tears to my eyes, bringing up the grandbabies.
I think you kind of answered this already. Do you think atheists support each other enough, or is there a lack of support for people that need it in the atheist community in general, and in the Black atheist community in particular?
We do our best. The support is, I've been out about 5 years. The support that was there then compared to now, oh my God, it's increased exponentially. But due to the negative responses you can incur if you ask a question, there are those who are hurt because they are afraid to ask questions because they're called unsavory names. And these are brand new people fresh out the closet, who really need help and direction. So it's experiences like that causes those who are questioning or those who are fresh out the closet to be neglected. They're neglected because of fear of asking a question. But with Black non-believers, we have Black Atheists of America, we have Sakivu in Los Angeles, Black Skeptics of Los Angeles. We have the Black Atheists in Dallas, Black non-believers. We have it in Houston. We're out there. We could not proliferate if there was not a need. We just couldn't multiply if there's not a need. And same with the other minority cultures. If there was no need, why are they increasing? And it's not to snub our noses in the atheist community. This is necessary. When you go into a meetup, you do notice if you're the only black person. You go to the conference and nobody talks to you. Alex Jules was on a speaker panel. Security got called on him. Why? Because he was a black man milling around. And the person didn't know that he was on a speaker panel, and security got called to escort him out.
Wow. Where was that?
I'm not going to tell where it was.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But, you know, people think we just throw the race card. We just throw the race card. We just throw the race card. No. Look, I am scheduled to speak in North Carolina. This just happened.
Oh.
I was contacted by a white atheist who wants to suggest to me what I should talk about. How do you have the nerve to tell me what I should speak on and what I shouldn't speak on? This happened 2 weeks ago.
I can just imagine the response from that one.
Exactly. and this man is not a Native American, because we talked. And, oh yeah, Black Atheists of Philadelphia. I definitely didn't want to forget Jen Taylor. But he has an accent. He's from Europe. I said, here you are, a European man, and you can walk in a privilege in America that I will never be able to experience. And I was born and raised in America. But your gender and your skin color have gave you a pass to experiences I will never be able to experience. And you think you can tell me what I can present and what I shouldn't present? If you don't like my presentation, walk out. Yeah. And he told me, because I don't want to hear another presentation on diversity. Can you excuse me?
As long as we need presentations on diversity, they're going to have to continue to be out there.
And that's what I told him. As long as there are these issues, diversity will be spoken about. And if that's an issue for you, do not attend. Just don't attend. And I'm just like, unbelievable. Unbelievable.
There's a few more questions came in there, Sheila.
Yep, I'm going through them. Do you think that the white atheist community has an explicit or implicit monopoly of the media and public attention? And what, beyond simply remembering to check their privilege, can that community do to redress the imbalance?
Well, they're doing what? Well, let's just be honest. They have the money. The one who pays is the one who plays. But what I want to say is these organizations that are majority white have also extended themselves to us. We had the Blackout rally, the Blackout Secular rally in New York, and Dave Silverman is right there. We have support from the white community, from the upper echelon, for lack of a better way of putting it. You know, so that's what I said. I'm not here to say that, oh, woe is me, there's no white atheists accepting us or assisting us, because they are. And the question they ask is, what can we do for you? And they do. They assist us. But even with the help, we still have to deal with the negatives. And you could be negative, you can have your opinion, but we're not going to change. We're not going to remove black from our meetups, from our groups. We're not going to change our organization names because it makes you feel uncomfortable. That's personal. That's right. Something that you've encountered, who knows, back in childhood or whatever. If black makes you uncomfortable, then ask yourself, why does it make you uncomfortable? We don't even know you.
Right.
But you've already put a bead on our foreheads as the enemy, and that's not true. It's not true at all.
Would it be fair, you think, to say that racism in this day and age is a residual effect from religion in the atheist community?
Is a residual effect from
religion? Do you think it's somebody's asking if you think that perhaps it's left over from when the majority of the atheists at one time were indoctrinated into some form of religion or another? Do you think that some of the racism that is still inherent today is left over from that? Or do you think it goes deeper than that?
I wouldn't dare want to use a broad brush and create an answer. Because what is the excuse for those who haven't had indoctrination of religion? What's their excuse?
Right.
You know, so I can't say that that's a residual effect. I don't. Maybe they had a negative experience with a black person, but I've had negative experiences with a white person. I got called nigger for the first time when I was 18. And I'm not taking it out on the community. You know, I've encountered it in my job. I've been followed around the stores. I'm 45, and to this day, I have to contend with driving while black. But I don't take it out on every white person I see, because I know not every white person is like that. Right. That's something happened. Maybe it was a succession of events that caused this type of thinking. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't play one on TV. But my point in all of this is that's your problem. I don't, like I tell people, what you eat don't make me shit. So if you want to be a bigot, if you want to be a racist, if you want to be prejudiced, good for you. But my focus is those who are crying at night, trying to figure out how they're going to tell their family they're an atheist. Those who are sitting on the pews, trying not to get up and scream because they can't come out as an atheist and have to subject themselves to another sermon on Sunday. Those who are being subjected to persecution on the job because they have decided to make their non-belief open. See, that those are my concerns. Not idiots. I have no tolerance for them. My heart is for those who need help. Right. And if I can give it, I will.
Well, I think too, I think more than being a residual from religion, I think it more has to do, especially in this country, it has more to do with, how our country started out, because there was, slavery was so widely accepted, and, things, we'll say opinions about, at the very least, about other people that you come into contact with in your community, a lot of times gets passed down. You see your parents behaving a specific way toward a group of people, or, various groups of people, then you're going to pick up on that. I think it's more of a social construct than it is a religious sort of, leftover from religion.
Even with that, okay, I'm not willing to accept that as an excuse, because there comes a time where you know the difference between right and wrong. My family, my maternal side of my family, came from the woodiest, countryest part of Mississippi, with crosses burned in the yard, run off the land. Just the persecution that my family has experienced was horrific, that I was able to escape because my mother left and moved to California. There is a certain type of way, a certain type of attitude that the older people in my family have towards white people. They don't trust white people. Okay? Right. I understand why, because of the life and death experiences that they encountered. You couldn't look at a white person in the face. You had to say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Well, that wasn't my experience. And even though there have been some negative connotations that my family has had, I cannot take that attitude out on everybody that I experience. It's not fair. I do understand it, and I don't excuse it. But my son is in an interracial relationship. And my children has been raised, it don't matter if you're gay, straight, short, white, black, you treat them based on the way you're treated. Well, my mother is not happy at all about my son being in an interracial relationship because she's white. Right. And, but unfortunately, my son, I had to have the talk with my son. Because my son is black, he's male, there are certain ways my son has to act because he is in a relationship with a white woman. Otherwise, my son can possibly go to jail just based on her word. I just said, you really just need to get to know her. We living in Michigan. There are things that can happen. Someone in her family can become upset with you, tell a lie, and guess who's going to be believed? Right. You'll be going to jail. So there is a special talk, conversation, unfortunately, that white people will not have with theirs because the social implications and legal implications are real. You know, if my son got into a disagreement, my son could possibly lose his life. You know, this is reality. And we see this in the news all the time about the black men who are killed, you know, for no reason. So as a black mother, that concerns me. But I would never tell my son, let her go, you know, because there's in our community, if she can't use your comb, don't bring her home. I don't care what comb she used. If she treats you right and she loves and accepts you, then I can love and accept her.
That's right. That's right. Okay.
Jay asked one more question that I had a hard time understanding, but I'm going to give it a shot. How the religions, all of them, I'm going to try to rephrase it. Religion acts like kind of like a drug in Africa, where people basically get hooked on religion. I think that's what she's talking about here. Is there a realistic hope to get Africa to give up these drugs?
Is there a realistic hope? Well, I don't know if you guys seen a couple of, maybe it was a month ago or maybe close to a month ago, where this pastor in Africa commanded the parishioners to eat grass. Did you guys see that?
Yes, I saw that. That was crazy.
Everyone was out on the lawn eating grass, turned around, they puked. But guess who didn't ingest the grass? The pastor didn't eat the grass. So I don't know if it's realistic, because based on what I'm hearing, this surgence, I don't want to say surgence. All of a sudden we're hearing about these Christian antics going on in Africa. Is this new? You know, this is new to me. So I don't know if it's going to die out. I have no idea, because it's all of a sudden this is being brought to my attention. And I'm like, is this new? Has it always been like that? I don't know. I have no idea, but I have a friend who just had an interaction with a woman who's from Africa, who makes it her business to put her down. And she's a Christian, African. And I'm just like, is she really indoctrinated the way you're saying? Or, you know, because I was like, please tell me you're exaggerating. And she said the way she treats my friend was despicable. And I said, so why are you calling her your friend? You know, she's very condescending, quotes the Bible, tell her that, you know, she should be stoned to death. And she's, I think, been in America maybe for 2 years. But so this is coming from Africa, and it's coming into the United States. So I don't know if it's going to die out, because if this young lady finds people who agree with her, who knows what'll happen. I would like to think it'll die out sooner rather than later, but I don't. If people are so willing to sign up and put gays to death, I'm not hopeful. But I would like to be hopeful, but I'm not. Not in the next 20 years. I would like to be proved wrong, though.
Okay. Sorry. Carry on. There's a little bit of, seems to be someone's very upset behind the scenes.
Yeah, we have a troll.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's all right. We get them all the time.
Yeah.
So just Sheila, if you had any, Sheila or Marty, if you can get some, I'll see what the chat room has to say with questions.
Yeah, let's see.
I think that covers all the questions we had in here.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What the Black Atheists of Michigan, or Detroit rather, that's a new group, isn't it?
Yeah, Black Non-Believers of Detroit.
Thank you. What, you have any specific projects or anything that's going with that one currently?
We were trying to get Jeremiah. We were hoping to get Jeremiah Kamara out so that he can premiere his movie in Michigan, but the weather. And I had a feeling that the weather in February would be horrendous, but it was even worse than what we anticipated with polar vortex 1, 2, 3, 6, 12, 11. So we're definitely trying to get Jeremiah Kamara, who lives in Atlanta, to get his movie Contradiction out, where it speaks about the antics of the Black church. And we hope to get Sakibu Hutchinson out to Michigan. And there's a couple of projects that Black Nonbelievers as a whole is working on, not scheduled for this year, but next year. So yeah, we have a couple of irons in the fire, but we just need Mother Nature to cooperate.
It's got to be hard in Michigan. You guys are like just below Canada. You get a lot of the bad weather up there.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. Is there a lot of new kind of Black non-believers groups starting up nationwide for you? Are you getting a lot of kind of new chapters at the moment?
We have the Mother Black Nonbelievers in Atlanta, which was founded by Mandisa Thomas. Let me think. Black Nonbelievers in Chicago. We have Black Nonbelievers of Detroit, Black Nonbelievers of Metro Orlando, Black Nonbelievers of Dallas, and I believe I may be leaving. I think I got them all. I believe. So we're getting there.
Yeah,
we're getting there. But we have love for all of the groups, who are trying to spread the message and be there for the new atheists.
Yeah, Derek, and we're not going over that question again. Someone else mentioned. So, like I say, are you getting like is there a? Sorry, let me think. Yeah, is there a kind of different culture for, like, say, blacks in the South versus blacks in the northern states? Is there kind of different pressures you face when you're setting up your groups?
Well, Atlanta is pretty progressive.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't think that their attitudes. I think their attitudes would be like those in the North. Now, if we set up a Black Nonbelievers in Mississippi, I think that may be a different issue. It's very oppressed. They still have separate proms for Black people and white people. So I definitely think that it would be an issue if we had a Black Nonbelievers in Mississippi. But I think it would be an awesome project if we did have a Black Nonbelievers in Mississippi or Tennessee. And who knows, that may come to fruition. Yeah.
Sheila, you got a question?
I'm betting that would probably, I think you'd see a lot more of the old school kind of racism coming out for something in Mississippi, don't you? I mean, if you were to...
I think we would be like the young lady who is facing life or death situations overseas. I do believe that we would have that same issue in Mississippi. But I don't know, maybe in Jackson, where it's a little bit more progressive, but it would definitely be a fight, to set up shop and to just be available for people, which is why, the presence of minority atheists in general is heavy online, because you don't know what you will come up against if you meet in real time. Yeah. You don't know.
Right.
So, it is it's a haven, but for those who can get out, we do encourage people to get out, because it's just not the same. It's just not the same as getting out there and dialoguing and, people hugging you or holding your hand. And, it's great to know that I have people that I can go to online, but it's even more so when I have members of my group who drive 2.5 hours to a meetup. I mean, to me, that is such an awesome show of support. So I have to be there to support them too. Yeah. It's just some things you cannot do online that you can do in real time.
I was also going to ask, I think you're aware of the Clergy Project. Do you mean, I hate it a little bit, like for black preachers, do you think they would have a much harder time if they came out, like the ones that are kind of trapped?
Well, it is a harder time because there is a Black atheist former minister, pastor, who is not receiving the same benefits as the white pastors. The benefits, she doesn't have the speaking engagement. She doesn't get to travel and share her experiences as in comparison to those who are not Black. So there is a difference, and it is harder. And I think because if, let's just say you graduated top of the class at Holy Ghost Tabernacle College of Jesus Christ, you're not going to be able to get out there and use that or put that on your resume in order to get a job. It doesn't count. So a lot of these pastors and ministers, they only have a high school education. There are those who, have a theologian degree, but there are many who once they didn't get past the high school. So that can be a problem when you're coming out at 40, 45, and you're used to making a certain amount of money, and there's a certain amount of celebrity being a pastor. To walk away from that and have nothing is traumatizing, and it's something that you definitely need to consider, before coming out. Because there's an experience as a white atheist who enter that clergy project that you may or may not experience if you're Black.
Yeah.
So,
Marty or Sheila, do you want to come in there?
Based on your experience within the, within the Black religious community, do you think that, especially with some of the ministers, maybe they would refuse to even if they didn't believe, do you think maybe they'd stay there just because it seems to be a good social status, or even a good way to, they tend to have money in their pocket and good standing within the community? Do you think there are some who just stay because it's a good way to make a living, I guess?
It is a good way to make a living. I mean, think about it. And even, let's not even relegate it to just being a Black pastor. If you're a pastor, period, you are taking a hell of a chance walking out and saying, damn this, I can't preach this shit no more because I don't believe it. You walk out of this into what? What are you going to do? This pastor, I can't remember his name, wanted to take a year off. He wanted to take a year off and live as an atheist. Mm-hmm. And what happened? Church fired his ass. Yeah. And he was just doing a sabbatical. Yeah. But the atheist came to his aid, and he recouped thousands of dollars. Mm-hmm. Would that happen if he was Black? Hell no. I can say that with certainty. If that was a Black pastor, nope. There's not going to be a major call to action by the high profile atheist to say, hey, this person left the church, and let's show them that atheists are good people. No, that's not going to happen. Not by the high profile
and
upper
that's pretty strange,
no.
Because it would look like, strictly strategically, it would seem like a good move. Mm-hmm. So that's really
but
strange,
in reality, you still have bills. A lot of these pastors become misplaced. You living in a house that's owned by the church. Now you have to find somewhere to live. Your livelihood, everything is paid for by the church. So when that's taken away from you, what do you have? Where are you going to go? There's some serious considerations that need to be thought out before you make that declaration that I'm an atheist. And I'm all for people getting free, but I'm not for people becoming homeless.
Yeah. What I was getting at was, if you look at how these so-called big-name atheists would treat a Black pastor differently, that's what I mean. I think it would be strategically a good move.
Okay.
To accept them, pointing out that there are Black people who are atheists too. That they should embrace that instead of going, oh well, that's just a Black guy.
it would certainly make the atheist community look like they were a lot more accepting, a lot more willing to help. I completely understand what you're trying to say.
And they would acknowledge, it would be a way to be more acknowledged among black people as well, that, you know, hey, we're atheists, and guess what? We're not assholes.
Right.
It might actually send a message out to those black atheists who aren't out or who are afraid to come out, that not only do they have the black community to turn to within the atheist community, but the community as a whole would be more accepting, and you know, I think it would send a very good bit. So I completely agree with that. I think definitely helping, you know, a black minister who decided to turn away would certainly send out a great message.
Well, I'm hopeful. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I know that we're not going to play kumbaya in a day either. So I am hopeful. If I wasn't hopeful, I would not do these kind of interviews. I wouldn't share this kind of information. You know, I would just relegate myself to the black community and just be happy with that. But there are things that, there are disparities that need to be discussed, and I'm very hopeful that things are going to improve. They are improving. But today, like I said, there is a former black pastor who has not experienced many of the benefits that our non-black pastors, former pastors, have. So if she went through the clergy project, I am just not hopeful today that if a black atheist, a black pastor walked away, that they will swoop them up and just unleash untold thousands of dollars, unless this was somebody that was well-known kind of pastor with the mega church, and then he would go on a speaking circuit. But even a speaking circuit, you know, you're not going to become rich. Well, most of us aren't going to, you know, but I think there will have to be something extraordinarily unique in order to gain that kind of attention as former pastors who have no notoriety that are white. You know, if you black, you have to go above and beyond in order to be noticed.
All right.
You have an average white Joe and an average black Joe. Average white Joe is going to win. There has to be something like unique that they think people would want to see, and in order to be acknowledged. You know, and it's just how it is. That's just how it is.
Right.
So, yeah.
There was a question there. It was one I'd had earlier, but I completely forgot. What did you make of, like, Neil deGrasse Tyson? He's a non-believer, but he seems to want to avoid the label atheist. I mean, do you feel like if he embraced that label, it might encourage more black atheists? Because I think he'd be a great role model for some people.
Well, he is a great role model. It doesn't, you know, I don't need Neil to say I'm an atheist. We know what he is. Yeah. we know. I mean, when religion comes up, he disputes it, he refutes it. So do I really need him to come out and say, hi, I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm an atheist? No. And however he identifies, he is a fantastic role model. Yeah. I think you should be a role model for yourself. I think it's good that we can find people and go, wow, he's so intelligent, and I love his books. But I'm my own role model. Yeah. And while there are people I admire and there are those that I greatly respect, I'm not going to look up to you because you can make mistakes and disappoint me. And then where would that leave me? So I choose to look at myself and make great lasting friendships like my sis Sheila. You know, I know Sheila, me and Sheila has never met in person, but you cannot tell me she's not my sister. You know, you can't tell me that. So is she my role model? There are some awesome things that I admire about her because she's tireless, and I don't know when she sleeps. And you know, I don't get it. She's like the energetic Energizer Bunny rabbit. But I can't put her on a pedestal because as soon as something happens, then I'll be disappointed. So I just have to do what's best for me, and I'm my own role model.
I don't want to be on a pedestal. It makes it too far to fall.
I know. I know.
Besides, I'm quite happy being your equal. You are one of my most favorite people within the community because there's just so much stuff you do, and because you are, whether you want to be or not, you are a role model to other people. And well, I think I love being connected to you. I love being a friend of yours because you really are. You're a great humanitarian. You are a wonderful person, and because you do judge people for who they are, not for what they are, but for who they are and for what they do. And I think more people should be like that.
Yeah. Well, I think, how can I come on here and say and speak on the issues that has arisen in the community and then turn around and do the very thing that I complained about, that I brought to light? That doesn't make any sense. So, you treat me the way I'll treat you the way you treat me. And that's it. I'm not going to take it personal. I'm not going to write a blog about it. I'm not going to write a big, long treatise about it. It is what it is. And I don't expect everybody to love me, and I don't expect everybody to dislike me. And that's fine. That's fine.
Just to let everyone know, there's 15 minutes left, so if you have your last questions, get them in quick. So I'll hand back over to Sheila or Marty, whoever wants to go ahead. Ooh.
I still don't have anything to say.
All right. We'll hand over to Sheila then.
I've said what I planned on saying, so I'm just running out the clock. I'm sorry. I'll jump in if someone says something.
Yeah. All right. We'll go with you, Sheila, then.
Do you have anything coming up, I guess, that you want people to watch out for within, for any venue, whether it's for Detroit or for Michigan, or is there anything that you think that people should know about?
Well, I just would like to suggest a couple of books that, if people really would like to understand, the mindset of Black atheists, I would like to suggest people read Darrell Smith, Black Nuns, You Are Not Alone, Sikivu Hutchinson, Sikivu Hutchinson, Godless Americana, Ebony Exodus by Candace Gorham, and her book highlights the exodus of Black women out of the church. Donald Wright, the only prayer I ever pray is let my people go. I just think that just as we promote books by the Four Horsemen, and we voraciously read these books in order to gain insight, I just think we should also do the same with topics that we don't understand. If you want to know, if you want to understand, understand our experience instead of criticizing, just pick up the books. They're available on Amazon, moderately priced, and you will understand a little bit just what we go through. So I just think it's important that we just shed light on this issue, and I'm hopeful that this will not be an issue for long. But until then, it's going to be talked about, and we're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to keep being there for not just our people, but for all people. And I just wish people would do the same. Stop criticizing. Just get up and put your hand to the plow and work. Let's do this.
Yes, I will say that I have read Darrell's book, certainly, and I'm friends with him on Facebook, and he's just a wonderful person to talk to, and I would highly recommend, at the very least, reading his book, because it's very good, and it certainly does, especially for someone who hasn't been in that community. It's an eye-opener. So I would definitely, at the very least, and it's an easy, it's easy to follow, it's easy to read, so I would definitely recommend at the very least that one.
Yeah, and also with these groups, the minority groups, white people are not excluded. I just feel like I just have to reiterate that we do not believe in being exclusive, because we know what that feels like. In all of our groups, we have white members who not only support, but they participate and they encourage and they bring other people so that they can gain understanding and knowledge. So I just want to put that out there, that we are not separatists. We supplement.
Yeah.
We're not to supplement. We're to be an addition to.
You mentioned something about an exodus of black women from the church. Could you tell us something about that? Because I haven't heard of that.
Oh, okay. Well, Candace Gorham, she's a counselor, and she had contacted many Black atheist women to share their story about leaving the church. Now, with Black women, well, with women who are minorities, your womanhood is attached to how godly you are. So while the man can stay at home and watch football on TV on Sundays, if the woman isn't at church with the children, then she's not a good mother, she's not a good wife. So Candace Gorham, and her last name is Gorham, as in Mary, set out to do some research and came out with this awesome book with different contributions for Black women who left the church. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah. So it's you know, I when you go to a church, not just Black churches, but when you go to church, it's predominantly attended by women, and there's a reason for that. You're judged.
I think that's fairly
true. If you're not.
I think that's fairly true across the board for any church, no matter what race you are. The women are the ones that do the organizing. They are the ones that do the promoting. They're the ones who make sure that everything is they seem to hold most of the at least the collective power within it, making sure that everything is done and making sure that, the community is staying involved, So yeah. I think that, but it seems to me, just based on my interactions with other people, it seems to be especially strong in the Black community, that they're the ones who kind of drive everything and make sure that it all happens. So. And
that's definitely true. That's most definitely true. I'm glad I'm free. I'm glad for, I always give credit when I first came out to myself as an atheist, and I took to Twitter and I just followed a shitload of white atheists, because honestly, I did not know there were Black atheists. I just did not know. My only knowledge of atheists and atheism was that it was connected to white folks. So I just searched atheists and just followed just a shitload, and they were very patient. I had a million questions, and I subsequently asked about, are there any Black atheists? And they pointed me to Facebook, but I just believe that we all can learn from each other. I don't have to exclude people who look differently than me, because whatever your experience is, I can gain something from it, and you can do the same with me. We all can be teachers and we all can be students.
Yeah. It's quite funny, because when I kind of finally realized I was an atheist and I looked up online, the first atheist I came across was a Black guy, Reggie Finley. You probably know him.
Oh, Reggie.
That was the first thing I came across, and that's kind of what introduced me to everything.
Infidel guy?
Yeah, he was awesome in the day. I loved him. There was also another question. What kind of networking do you do with the other kind of minority groups? I mean, because the only one I can imagine is the Latinos. They would probably have a tough time coming out of the closet, coming out as atheists, because it's kind of, the religion's very extremely tied into their culture there.
It is very tight, and I remember in Austin, David Tamayo had highlighted the macho, the machismo mentality in the community, and I did send an email to the Hispanic atheists in Chicago. So I have 2 groups that I plan to visit in Chicago, because I just want to let the minority atheist groups, secular groups know that we're in this together. You know, like it, love it. We all have a fight before us, and we can do better together than independent. So, you know, so I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Hopefully in the spring, if not spring, then sometime in the summer, I'll be taking the train out to Chicago so I can meet my brothers and sisters. And that's just what I want to do. I just want to meet, hug, chill out, laugh, cry, whatever, with my brethren.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, coming up, I'll just let you have a final question then, Sheila or Marty. Who's good?
Okay. I thought I saw one in here somewhere that I wanted to read out. No.
Okay.
No, the biggest conversation seems to be in there. We have one who just he seems to think that you're trying to segregate yourself from the rest of the people in the community, and I'm having a hard time explaining to him.
Well, it doesn't, you know what, Sheila, it doesn't matter what he think, because that goes back to what I said at the beginning.
Yeah.
These type of people are the ones who don't research, who don't attend any meetup. So you can't try to rationalize with someone who wants to be intentionally ignorant. Willful ignorance, you don't even engage, because it's already in his mind, her mind, what they want to believe. The assumptions is there. Let him stay. Who cares? He want to believe what I don't give a damn.
You know me, I can't walk away from an argument.
Who cares? So let them think that. You don't want to attend a meetup? I don't care. I'm targeting those who want to attend the meetup, not those who don't want to.
Yeah, anyway, we're coming up for the last 4 minutes, so yeah, we'll let you have your kind of soapbox moment, Bria. So
I was on my soapbox the whole time, so you know.
Well, this is the kind of.
So, you know what? Okay, so there goes the nigger word, which I expected. So, I mean, you know what? It's just a sad display to see that differences can bring out either the best or the worst in people. And, you know, I just refuse to lower myself to that and degrade myself towards that kind of antics. So I just want to say that I am very thank you, Trolling with Logic, for allowing me to be a part of your day. I'm really flattered that I was an invitation was extended to me, and I just want to encourage you to keep fighting the fight, because the fight is real, and the more soldiers we have on the battlefield, the better chance we have. I really appreciate it, and it was a pleasure meeting you.
Oh, pleasure meeting you as well. Just go around the panel now for final thoughts. Marty.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic that I unfortunately know very little about. This the whole humanitarian thing, you know, with rights and stuff like that. That's something that is so far removed from me, because, you know, I live in a part of the world where that's not an issue for atheists. Being from Sweden, so it's just something that, yeah, it's something that I should know more about. But every time we have someone on the show and we're talking about the subject, I feel like I have nothing to contribute, unfortunately. But it was great to have you on.
Sweden is definitely on my bucket list. I definitely will. I want to visit Sweden. That is a beautiful place. It really is.
Yeah, not during the cold half of the year.
Well, hell, we have cold, so yeah. I'm
yeah,
sure
you live far enough north to be familiar with that. Yeah.
Right, and Sheila, your final thoughts.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to Bria for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you again. I love every time that, you know, every chance that I get to talk to you. It's just absolutely fantastic. And I do want to just kind of, you know, ask that there's been a lot of questions in the chat room about stuff that people don't quite understand. And I do want to say, without being an arrogant ass about it, if you don't know something, ask questions, and don't be, don't do it in such a confrontational way. That's, being called ignorant about a topic is not an insult. There's a lot of things that I'm ignorant about. I'm ignorant about physics. I would never, however, I would never go into a situation trying to, demand that somebody tell me about physics or do it in such an arrogant way. So if you don't understand something, by all means, ask questions. If you want to know what it's like to attend a meeting for, for example, Black Atheists of Detroit, go in and find out what it's like. It's not, just because a group is labeled a specific way, it's not necessarily just for that group. It's a chance. It's just a kind of an outlet for people who are, maybe from the same community, to know that they have a spot to go. But it doesn't mean that you can't because you're not Black or, or Asian. There's definitely Asian organizations that are starting up. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to go. It's just, it gives people a place to know that they are going to be welcome. So I would definitely say, if there's something that you don't understand, research it, look out for it, ask questions, rather than just going on your own ignorant assumptions. So.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much for turning out tonight. It's been fantastic. A big thank you for our guests for taking the time out to appear. It's been awesome.
Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
So just to let everyone know, there is no show next week as I'm away celebrating my birthday in Dublin. I'm going to be meeting up with...
in other words?
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. I'll be meeting up with Kitch, so you just know what's going to happen there. And we'll be back in 2 weeks, and ironically enough, following on from that, we're going to have a St. Patrick's Day special show. Kitch and the lovely Pumpkin, who's been doing a sterling job moderating the room, will be the hosts for that one.
Sure.
And we're hoping to have on, and I'm echoing from somewhere, Bria, I'm echoing through your system right now. Oh, that's it, it's gone now. Just the guests for that, we're hoping to have Michael Nugent from Atheist Ireland, Phil Moriarty, and the YouTuber Not In My Name. So it's going to be an all-Irish affair. So please join us for that. And like I say, and again, the Dale McGowan show is rescheduled for the 5th of April. And Sheila, do you have any announcements? Because I know you do a few other shows.
I guess in addition to being here, you can also find me at A News. Our shows there are usually released Tuesday or Wednesday. You can find me on Facebook. By all means, I have a page there, Feminatheist. You can also find me on Twitter at Sheila Blackadder or at Feminatheist1. So that's pretty much it.
Yep, and just to let everyone know, the podcast will be updated Tuesday or Wednesday if you want to catch it. And this will be uploaded to YouTube sometime tonight. So hope you all enjoyed, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks, and have a good rest of the weekend wherever you are.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Outside of class, why couldn't we go to their house? We weren't supposed to be on football team, cheerleading. So quickly I knew that I would not be a lifelong Jehovah's Witness. But even with all that, I ended up being baptized as a Jehovah's Witness at the age of 17. And at 18, I walked away. I just could not see myself participating in such an oppressive religion. So I went through this spiritual phase and studied Buddhism and Nation of Islam, and subsequently I became a Pentecostal Christian in my 30s. And I was very happy being a Christian because it was such a difference between the quiet atmosphere of the Jehovah's Witness to this lively people running around the church in a Pentecostal church. And I became part of leadership because I wanted to help people. And subsequently, I became frustrated because I noticed that people were becoming hurt in the church more than being helped. And I remember asking the woman that ministered to me, what do you do? Because she always referenced church as a hospital. And I said, well, what do you do when people go to the hospital and they're sicker when they leave than upon entering? And she said, you put it in God's hands. And I wasn't satisfied with that answer. So I ended up leaving church altogether, but I was still a Christian and maintained that I was going to have a relationship with God, studied the Bible to the best of my ability.
2-hour video where the alleged copyright infringement is, and I don't have the time. So you can contact me if you know where I can get some cheap legal advice on this issue. I really need it. And I don't think there's any other announcements after that. So very quickly, a reduced panel tonight. And as always, welcoming back Marty. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
And Sheila, welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh, one final announcement. As you know, we cancelled last week with Dale McGowan, and we have got him back for the 5th of April. We rescheduled that because I know there was a lot of interest in that show. And so I'll just hand over. You can introduce and get fired in with the questions as usual. I don't know what that was, but carry on, please.
Okay, our guest this week is Bridgett Crutchfield, who is the founder of, correct me if I'm wrong, you are the founder of the Non-Believers of Michigan, is that correct?
Minority Atheists of Michigan.
Thank you.
And the president of Black Non-Believers of Detroit.
Fantastic. I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it. Would you give us a little bit of backstory about yourself, how you went from being a believer to trying to help other people come out?
Well, I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. I was in California, Los Angeles, California. And quickly I became angry once I became a teenager. There was so much that we couldn't do, and I just couldn't understand why couldn't we have interactions with our classmates.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm the swirling dot on the screen right now for those who are asking where this voice is coming from because my webcam's decided not to work tonight. Anyway, this is Throwing with Logic, 1st of March 2014, roughly 7 o'clock here in the UK and 2 p.m. Eastern Time in the States. Just the usual announcements. If you do want to call in, because calling in, you'll jump the queue for the questions. We do give callers priority. Add the Skype contact, Throwing with Logic. Send us a PM, quick guess to the question, and we'll add you in due course to the conversation. And also by calling in, remember this show is recorded for later uploading, so no funny stuff with the DMCAs and that later. And the show recording, as you can see with our funky new watermark in the corner, we are public domain, so feel free to mirror the show, and we have been seeing lots of people mirroring the show, so please do that. And just link back to us as a courtesy. And don't know, is there any announcements? Yes, quickly with Living Waters, I'm still trying to get a hold of legal advice, and they either seem to be wanting a ridiculous fee up front, or they want me to point out all the parts in it.
But what I was reading was just horrifying. I would read Proverbs and Psalms, the feel-good scriptures, but when I set out in Genesis, there were just so many questions of, that atheists have about light. God created light and the sun, and it's just like, wait a minute. So if you created light, what preceded? It was just so many discrepancies. Like when I got to Exodus and read the stories about Pharaoh, God having to harden Pharaoh's heart, and I'm like, well, if you had to harden his heart, then logically, that leads me to believe that his heart was soft and was probably going to free the Hebrews. So there were just so many questions. And when I would ask the woman who led me to Christ, she always would say, God's way is not our way. And I just became increasingly frustrated. And I just I couldn't do it anymore. I could not defend a God that was okay with being a mercenary, because that's what I was discovering. God was nothing short of a mercenary. And looking at the news and the current events, I said, there cannot be a God. There cannot be a God. And that led me to my path of atheism.
Right. Okay. So once you kind of cast off the whole religion part of your life, what was your next step? How did you get involved in, being active in the community, I suppose?
I think many atheists who become active don't set out wanting to be active. You just want to learn. And so I ended up attending a meetup, and I noticed that there weren't too many people that looked like me, not only Black, but there weren't many women. And so I asked the organizer, about the disparity. I questioned her, and she put the ball in my court, and she asked me, what was I going to do about it? And I just looked at her like, what the hell do you mean? What am I going to do? This is something you should fix. I didn't verbalize that, but that's how I looked at her. This is something you should do. And she told me she's done all she can. So if I see an issue, I need to do something about it. And then that's when I created Minority Atheists of Michigan. I was mad at her for challenging me. I was very upset because I'm like, lady, I'm just here to learn. But she was right. She was right. She was right. So,
how has it been received, especially within the Black community? Do you get a lot of opposition? Do you find that you get more opposition within the Black community than you do being accepted in the atheist community as a whole?
I didn't. What's funny is Minority Atheists of Michigan is predominantly white.
Really?
When I tell people that, they're like, what? Yeah, it's predominantly white. So no, I haven't had too much opposition from that group. But the opposition came when I created the affiliate for Black non-believers. And I think what's sad is in our community, as soon as you see the word Black, as soon as you see